What is the date your mother died?
My mother died May 11th, 1944.
Okay. How how many were who was with you at the time of her death?
It was my father, Bronca, a neighbor, and that's it.
Did people Were you able to tell anybody in the camp, and did people come and pay shiva calls?
No, very rarely did somebody come in. They were afraid. First of all, they had to work.
I
They
thought
they could take off.
I thought Hala paid a shiva call.
She happened to be living in that block, in the house, and she could go through the tunnel.
So Hala Milik
Yeah.
took a great risk.
No, well, she went through the tunnel, and she came in up to my house.
So was she the only one?
One more, maybe.
Okay.
But she wasn't the risk if you're in the tunnel. Just the tunnel.
Okay.
There weren't people coming and going.
Now
they were afraid.
Okay. Now let's prior
But this is May.
This is May, but now I want to go back because there is a story that we did skip over. The story about your father.
Yeah.
At the beginning, when the Germans came,
Yeah.
there are two stories. Before, when you still had your family home.
Yeah. My family?
When you still had the home that you grew up in.
Yeah.
The apartment you grew up in. The Germans came to that apartment, and they gave you a certain amount of time to go into that apartment, if I remember the story correctly.
There were two stories too. When they came in and told us to get out, they gave my father 15 minutes to take my mother, me, and Bronca and get out and take one item. And my father, in his maybe a psychiatrist could explain why, but my father, in his great mix-up or whatever, grabbed an alarm clock. Why he grabbed an alarm clock is something that nobody can understand.
What did you take?
At that time, I was only 12 and a half. What did I take? I took a book.
What did Bronca take?
I guess she took a book.
Do you remember what your mother took?
No.
Now, and that was it. That's all the time you had?
That's 15 minutes.
Okay. After that, you never...
After that, they gave us that very, very dirty one room in that place which later, like I told you, was designated to be the ghetto. They came back, they gave our factory to a German, and our house they gave to the super. Because they gave that big factory to the German, they had to teach them how to run it. They were 30 workers at least. So they came back to get my father. And people that had big backgrounds and had money were allowed to come back. There were certain men. And they gave them green bands. They used to pick them up from that ghetto and bring them to their factories and teach the Germans how to run the factories. So they took my father, and because as a reward, they said to my father, you can take from the children's room the 2 beds to the ghetto. the two beds, which means my sisters and my father refused. My father refused because he was a tremendous optimist. And he said, no, I don't want to. And then when he came home, he told my mother, he said, I'm not going to disturb the house because soon we'll go back. That's what he said.
At what point, though, did the Germans take him for 3 weeks?
1944, my mother was still alive, so it had to be May, and not before May. Had to be March, when two Gestapo is the the worst police, German police. Two of them came and said that two Jews denounced that we still have a lot of money hidden under the grounds, in the walls. And my father said, no, I gave everything up that I had. I don't have any more money. And of course they didn't believe it. So they took him. They took him for 19 days. And there was a building, and it was called Kripo, Kriminalpolizei, Kripo. And in there were small rooms. In each small room was a Jew. And on the outside were Jews that were denouncing. This Jew had that much money, this Jew had that much money. And at night, when it was dark, they were speaking Yiddish. And they were saying, tell where the money is. If not, they're going to bring your wife. They're going to bring you children. They're going to kill them. Tell where the money is. Well, of course, the men didn't say it. They would rather be dead because they knew that this is lies. They're going to kill us anyway. My father didn't say it, but so every single day of the 19 days, he was beaten. Every day he was beaten. Every single day. After 19 days, they returned him home. He went as a 42-year-old man, but when he came back as a probably 82-year-old man. That's how he looked. His skin was black from beating. And this was just before they were going to liquidate the ghetto. So when they liquidated the ghetto, and he had to strip naked, and if they looked at the man looking like that, there was no question that the first thing they would do with him is put him in a crematorium. Immediately. Because he was 42, but he was black. I saw his body because he passed. Before they took him, I was putting cold compresses, and he was crying.
Do you think that it's one of the reasons Branka couldn't speak?
No. One of the reasons.
Okay, so how did it come about that it was liquidated, that Lodge was...
What?
What was your father doing in the years he was at Lodge before this happened? What was his work? Going back to the factory and helping the Germans run his factory?
What are you talking about? Before the war?
No, in Lodge
Yeah.
ghetto. The whole time he was there,
He
he was
was
teaching.
carrying lumber.
He, in addition to helping the Germans run his
Well,
factory,
that was a very short time.
so that was his job, carrying lumber. And your mother was doing what?
Whatever they brought her.
Okay. So now, how did the liquidation come about?
How did what?
How, at what point did you know? So you were doing the same job pretty much the whole time.
Yeah.
Branka was doing the
Yeah.
same job,
Yes.
and your father was doing the same job.
Yes.
How did the liquidation of the ghetto come about? Or let me ask you a question.
Well, I told you, once a month they came and they cleaned out. There were no more old people. Old people, I'm not telling you old people 80 years old. I'm telling you people 40. I'm telling you people 35. At close to the end of liquidation, there were only people of 35. There were no children. There were no teenagers. There were no. There was. There was. There was. Everybody was gone already. At the very end, nothing. They came. They said one day, "Pack your things. You're going to another camp," which was a lie, of course. And since we had no newspapers and no radios, we had no knowledge. Maybe some of our parents, the ones that were well, maybe they had some inkling, but they didn't share it with us. They were teenagers like us, but they didn't share it with us. There were rumors that there are some camps, but we didn't know how bad it was.
Okay, so at what point were you on? How did you get to Auschwitz?
Like 2 days before I came, one day before Rumkowski. You know who Rumkowski was?
You can tell me.
Rumkowski was the leader of Lodz ghetto. Some people say that he saved people in the ghetto, and some people say he was a devil. I have no opinion. I did my job. I don't know. I know that when he came to Auschwitz, the people that were in Auschwitz, that were sent there before, supposedly cut him in pieces. When I came, how did I come? They came 2 days before. They said, "Pack you little things that you have, and you will go into this wagon." My father was with us yet. But as soon as we got to Auschwitz, the minute we got to Auschwitz, they opened the doors and they said, "Men left, women right." You heard that.
Go ahead.
And they immediately said to throw away the things we brought and strip naked. And this is where my father was calling our names. And those big German dogs running around loose, ripping people to pieces.
And you were with Branka.
I was with Branka, but I also was with, to us, Lolek's mother was Bronca had a fiance, so he was the only son, so she was holding on to me. The Germans at some, not all of them, but some felt a mother holding on to a daughter together to the crematorium. So she was holding on to me. So I almost wound up in a crematorium, but for split of a second my sister grabbed me to her side. So she saved my life. That's it. So then we went to the showers. We were already stripped. That someone says, Helen says she had a piece of soap in her hand. I don't believe it. Because they open your mouth. Because people used to put a diamond in a cavity. If they saw a diamond in a cavity, they shot. They killed you immediately. So I came to Auschwitz and I had a men's shirt, and in the corners I had 2 diamonds. I had shoes, men's shoes, and in the sole I had gold pieces. But if they stripped me,
You had nothing.
I had nothing. And there was a special commando of Jews that ripped up all these clothes
And took all the diamonds.
and gave it to the Germans. And after that, we sat about 2,000 young girls 48 hours waiting for Mengele, Dr. Mengele, to supposedly examine us if we are, since we were with men in the ghetto, there was a possibility of pregnancy. So it took him 48 hours. We were very close to the crematorium. Naked. August 28th. You were in Europe. You know that it's cold. So we were just, one to the other. And the only thing they gave us is 1 spoon of sugar in 48 hours.
Then he examined you?
No, he didn't examine. He examined at random. He would walk over. He happened to me. I was very well built. I had beautiful breasts. So he twisted my nipples, and with his big boot, he
Kicked you in the stomach.
yeah. So if there was blood, I was pregnant. If there was no blood, I wasn't.
Okay. Once that he went through every...
How long do I have to go through this?
Oh, not too much longer. From there you went to Freiburg? How'd they get you out of Auschwitz?
They got us out of Auschwitz from...
Just tell me a little bit about Freiburg.
What?
Just tell me a little bit about Freiburg.
Nothing. Freiburg was a little town with one big building. That one big building, Freiburg is a town very close to Dresden. Dresden is very well known for China. For very fine china. And these goddamn Germans, in order to make it harder to torture, they didn't let us work from 8 to to 8. They made us work from 12 midnight to 12 noon. So 12 noon they were all hanging out of the window, watching us. 2,000. They never ask, who are they? Why are they? They deny they didn't know it.
Now, were you in Freiburg from August 44 till when?
Until about January, middle of February. And then, because the Russians were coming, and the English were coming, and the Americans were coming, the Germans figured out their diabetical mind. It isn't a good idea they should catch so many together, so many young people together. So they developed the Death March. They started marching us from one country to the other, to Germany, and on the way, if you try to clean the snow from your shoe, the wooden shoe, they shot you. So there were on the way corpses. They didn't want to have all these 2,000 together. So there were corpses all over. And they are diabetical, I can't even say it.
Diabolical. Diabolical.
Or whatever.
So you ended up, when did you end up in Mauthausen?
No, I didn't, not so fast. We stopped in Germany. Then we marched we stopped in Czechoslovakia. Czechoslovakia was wonderful. They tried so hard at night to throw things underneath, food. At night, the Germans shouldn't see. We should grab something, some other clothes, but we couldn't because we were shaved. As long as you were shaved, where could you go? The German would recognize you immediately. We stayed in one town where they make beer, Pilsner. And we stayed in few towns in Czechoslovakia. Was very nice, very good. And from there we wound up in Austria, and from Austria in Mauthausen. I can't do anymore.
Okay, that's all I need.
I cannot do anymore.
Okay.
Okay?